$14,200. That is the cost of the power wheelchair Lily Ockafer needed. Not wanted, not preferred. Needed in the specific, clinical, documented way of a need assessed by 3 separate occupational therapists across 2 years. The kind of need that gets written into reports and submitted to insurance companies and denied and appealed and denied again, twice, because the insurance company had determined that the manual wheelchair Lily had been using since she was 14 was adequate for her functional requirements. Lily was 17 years old. She had cerebral palsy affecting her left side. The manual wheelchair was adequate in the way that a thing can be adequate while also being increasingly, quietly, undeniably not enough. The way a shoe can be adequate until the soles start separating, and the kid wearing it has stopped saying anything about it because they have learned that saying something about the shoe creates a specific look on their parents' face that they would rather not see. Lily had stopped saying anything about the wheelchair 8 months ago. Her father, Desmond Ockafer, had noticed. He was 39 years old. He worked 2 jobs days at a distribution warehouse in Springfield, Illinois, and 3 evenings a week at a hardware store 6 blocks from their apartment. He had been working 2 jobs since Lily's mother Grace passed away 4 years ago, not because 2 jobs were necessary for survival, but because 2 jobs were necessary for the gap. The gap between what insurance covered and what Lily's life required. The gap was always there. He had been building a bridge across it since 2020 with the specific materials available to a man of his income and his love for his daughter, which were bake sales, a GoFundMe that had raised $4,100 in 2 years from people who knew them and some people who didn't, overtime when it was offered, the sale of his motorcycle in October, and a savings account that had $3,847 in it as of the morning he drove to the airport. $14,200. He had $7,948. He was $6,252 short. He had applied for Family Feud on a Thursday night in February, sitting at the kitchen table at 11:15 after Lily had gone to bed, because it was the only Thursday night in 3 months when he had not been working the evening shift, and because the application had been sitting in his browser as an open tab since November and he had been meaning to get to it. He had not told Lily he applied. He had not told Lily about the gap. He had not told Lily a lot of things, because Lily already knew most of them, and the ones she didn't know were the ones he was protecting her from knowing. And he had decided, not formally, not as a policy, but as the daily practice of a father raising a daughter alone, that some weights were his to carry and his alone. Steve Harvey asked him, in front of 291 people, what he was playing for. And Desmond Ockafer, who had been carrying this by himself for 4 years, said it out loud for the first time. The Ockafer team had flown from Springfield on a Friday morning. Desmond had arranged the flights 4 months in advance because 4 months in advance the fares were manageable in a way they would not be later. And Desmond Ockafer managed things the way he managed everything, as far ahead as possible, with the maximum information available, and with contingency plans for the contingency plans. "You're like a military operation," his sister Myrill had told him once. "I have a 17-year-old and 2 jobs," he'd said. "If I'm not a military operation, things fall down." The team was 5. Desmond Myrill, 35, a middle school art teacher from Decatur who had the warmth of someone who spent her days with 12-year-olds and the precision of someone who had grown up watching her older brother run an efficient household and had absorbed some of it. Myrill's husband Hassan, 40, who was quiet in the way of men who had learned that Ockafer family conversations moved fast, and the best contribution was a good answer delivered at the right moment. Desmond's mother, Sonia, 67, who had driven from Chicago the night before, and who had been watching Family Feud since the original run, and who sat in the airport at 6 in the morning with a cup of tea and the focused energy of a woman who intended to win something. And Omar, 37, Desmond's closest friend. A co-worker from the warehouse who had agreed to be the 5th member with the cheerful lack of hesitation that is the mark of someone who has never needed to fully understand a situation to show up for it. Lily had not come. She had a Saturday shift at the bookstore in Springfield where she had been working since February, her first job, which she had applied for herself in January, filling out the application at the kitchen table while Desmond watched and said nothing, and felt something that he did not have an immediate name for, which was pride and grief at the same time. The specific bittersweet of watching a child develop the independence that means they need you differently than they used to. She was working her shift. She knew about the show. She did not know why he had applied. He had told her it was for the experience. In the green room, Sunya correctly answered 7 of the 10 practice questions the producer ran through, said nothing about this, and accepted a second cup of tea. Myril and Hassan reviewed the rules together in the quiet, efficient way of two people who had been preparing for things together for 11 years. Omar ate everything on the fruit tray and then offered to get more for anyone who wanted it. Desmond sat at the edge of the green room couch with his hands on his knees. He was thinking about the number. 14,200, 7,948, 6,252. The show's prize range was publicized. He had done the research. He knew what winning fast money could mean. He had not let himself think past knowing. The show started. Steve Harvey walked out. Desmond looked at the stage and straightened up. Lily Acaffer had been born in March of 2007, the year her parents moved from Chicago to Springfield for Desmond's job at the warehouse, which paid better than the job in Chicago and had health insurance that was not nothing, which was the bar they were clearing at 25 and 24 with a child on the way and a plan that was, as most plans for 25-year-olds are, more optimistic than specific. The cerebral palsy had been identified at 14 months. Not a shock by then. There had been signals and they had been following them, and when the developmental pediatrician said the words they had been half expecting, they had sat with it for a day and then gotten to work. That was how Desmond and Grace had always operated. Feel the thing, then move. Grace had been the organized one. Not Desmond. Desmond was practical. But Grace had the specific executive function of a woman who could hold 12 variables simultaneously and prioritize them correctly under pressure, which was useful in her work as a home health aide and essential in building a life around a child with a complex needs profile. She had the notebooks. She had the binders with the therapy records and the insurance correspondence and the school accommodation plans. She had the color-coded system that Desmond had sometimes teased her about and had come to rely on entirely by the time she got sick. Ovarian cancer, diagnosed in 2019. She died in the spring of 2020, 6 weeks into a pandemic that had already made everything harder and made this, the specific this of losing the person who held the organizational system and also the emotional center of the house, into something for which there was no adequate preparation and no adequate word. Desmond had taken the notebooks. He had learned the binder system. He had called the insurance company on a Tuesday afternoon, 3 months after Grace died, while Lily was at school, and he had used the words and the codes and the documentation that Grace had assembled over years, and he had been on hold for 47 minutes and he had not cried until he was off the phone. Then he had made dinner. Then he had gotten the second job. Lily knew her father worked 2 jobs. She had known since she was 13. She had asked him once directly why, and he had said, "Because I want things to be good." She had looked at him with the expression of a child who knows the answer is incomplete and has decided to accept it anyway, because accepting it is an act of love for the person giving it. She was a good kid. He used that phrase, good kid, and it was accurate and also entirely insufficient, the way phrases are when they are trying to describe something larger than language wants to hold. She was patient in a way that had not been taught. She was funny in the specific way of people who have learned to read a room early and know exactly which angle makes something land. She had taken herself to the library every Saturday since she was 11, wheeling the manual chair down the 3 blocks between their building and the branch, and she had read her way through the young adult section and was now working on the adult literary fiction, which the librarian, a woman named Estelle who had been there since Lily was small, was curating for her with the thoughtfulness of someone who understood that a reader was not a demographic but a person. The manual wheelchair was a Quickie Q50R that Lily had been fitted for at 14. She was 17 now. In 3 years, her upper body strength had changed, her posture had changed, the distance she needed to travel daily had changed, and the chair had not changed. The left brake pad had needed replacing for 4 months. The left armrest had a hairline crack that Desmond had repaired twice with epoxy, and which was going to fail properly in a way the epoxy could not fix. The cushion had compressed beyond the therapeutic threshold, which the occupational therapist had noted in her last report. The power wheelchair the OT had recommended would go where Lily wanted to go with a fraction of the effort. It would accommodate her growth. It would have a cushion calibrated to her specific postural needs. It would not have a cracked armrest or a brake pad she had stopped mentioning. It cost $14,200. In Desmond's jacket pocket, the inside breast pocket, the one he kept things in that he did not want to lose, was a folded piece of paper. Lily had drawn it, not recently. 2 years ago when she was 15 in a notebook she kept for her art class. She had drawn a figure in a wheelchair on a road, the road going forward, vanishing toward a horizon that was bright at the edges, the kind of bright that suggests arrival rather than distance. She had not drawn a face on the figure. She had drawn the wheelchair very specifically in detail with the attention of someone who had been thinking about a particular object for a long time. It was not the manual chair. Desmond had found the drawing when he was returning the notebook to her bag after she'd left it on the couch. He had looked at it for a long time. He had folded it and put it in his jacket pocket. That had been 2 years ago. He had not taken it out since. He had not shown it to Lily. He could not explain entirely why he carried it, only that he needed it there. That some things you carry not because carrying them does anything practical, but because the weight of them in your pocket is a kind of reminder of what you are moving toward. The Acaffer family played the first game against the Fontaine-Webb family from Toledo, a sharp, well-organized team whose captain, a 40-year-old woman named Dolores Fontaine-Webb, ran the board for the first 2 categories with the efficiency of someone who had been underestimated in rooms before and had learned to correct that early. Sun Ya played front. She was fast and, as she had demonstrated in the green room, accurate, and she had the specific advantage of having watched this show since 1976 and understanding, better than the other 4 members of her team combined, that the game was about the survey and not the question. The survey, she told Omar before the game started. Not what you think most people think. Omar, who had eaten all the fruit, nodded seriously. Most people think, he started. You'll know when you know, Sun Ya said. Omar nodded again. Desmond played second and was precise and unfussy about it, the distribution warehouse approach to a problem. What does the situation need? Provide it, move on. He got 3 answers right in the first game without appearing to be working at it. They won the first round on Sun Ya's 4th answer in the last category, which appeared on the board with 38 survey responses, and which Dolores Fontaine-Webb acknowledged with the nod of a competitor who can recognize when she has been outplayed and does not require drama about it. During the break, Steve Harvey moved through the sections. He went to the Fontaine-Webb family first and got a story about Dolores' teenage son who had recently discovered he was a good cook and had been making the family dinner every Thursday for 2 months, which had been wonderful for 3 weeks, and had entered a challenging phase when he discovered molecular gastronomy. Then he crossed to the Acaffer side. He went to Desmond. Not because Desmond was the loudest presence. Omar was the loudest presence by several measures, and Sun Ya was the most visually distinctive, and Myril had the bright, open energy of a teacher who was genuinely having a good time. He went to Desmond because Desmond had the quality Steve Harvey had learned across 2,000 episodes to walk directly toward, the quality of a man who was in a room for a reason that the game did not entirely account for. He crouched. "What do you do?" he said. "Warehouse days," Desmond said. "Hardware store 3 evenings. 2 jobs," Steve said. "Yes. How long?" 4 years, Desmond said. 4 years of 2 jobs, Steve looked at him. "What's that for?" Desmond was quiet for 1 beat. "My daughter," he said. "What does she need?" Steve said. He had not planned the question. It arrived from the same instinct that had sent him directly to this man. Desmond looked at Steve Harvey. He had been carrying the number for 4 years. He said it. "She needs a wheelchair," he said. "A power chair. Her current one it's not working the way it should anymore. She's outgrown it. The insurance won't cover the one she needs." He paused. "It costs $14,200. I have about $8,000 saved. I'm here for the rest." The room absorbed this, not loudly. The quiet adjustment of people receiving specific, unglamorous, real information. Not tragedy, not drama. The plain arithmetic of a gap between what a child needs and what a father can reach. Steve Harvey looked at him for a long moment. He looked at the family section, at Sun Ya sitting straight, at Myril with her hand over her mouth, at Hassan, who was looking at Desmond the way a man looks at his brother-in-law when he hears something he did not know about someone he thought he knew. He looked at Omar, who was no longer smiling. He turned back to Desmond. "Does she know?" Steve said. "Your daughter, does she know you're here for this?" "She knows I'm here," Desmond said. "She doesn't know why. You didn't tell her." "She worries about me worrying," Desmond said. "If she knew I was carrying this." He stopped. He started again with the plainness of a man who has thought this through many times. "She's 17. She's already doing the work of her own life, which is considerable. I don't need to hand her mine, too." Steve Harvey stood up. "We're going to finish this game," he said, "and then we're going to come back to this." "That's the plan," Desmond said. The second game was different from the first. Not in outcome, the Akaforce won it, but in texture. The room was different. The audience that had been in standard game show mode had shifted, collectively and without being told, into the mode that rooms enter when something real is at stake and they know it. The applause when the Akaforce scored was warmer than before. The silence when the Fontaine Webb scored had a quality of concern in it that had not been present in the first game. The Fontaine Webb family felt it and played harder. Dollars was extraordinary in the third round. She found answers that nobody on either team had found, and she put points on the board with the focused determination of a woman who was not going to be outrun in her own specialty. She pulled her family to within striking range. The Akaforce held. Sun Ya, in the critical moment of the third round, the moment where the game turned, looked at the category and said her answer in the same tone she had said everything else, which was the tone of someone stating a fact. The board lit with 44 responses. Omar said, "Grandma Sun Ya," to no one, to everyone. "I told you," Sun Ya said, "fast money." Desmond went first. He stood at the podium backstage and he answered 5 questions. He thought about the number with each question, not as distraction, as fuel. The 14,200 and the 7,948 and the 6,252. The brake pad, the cracked armrest, the drawing in his jacket pocket. He answered 5 questions in 19 seconds. He came back out with 152 points. The family read it on his face before the board revealed it, the precise, contained expression of a man who has done the thing he came to do and is waiting to know if it was enough. Myrill went second. She stood at the podium. She was an art teacher. She spent her professional life asking 12-year-olds to look at things and say what they saw, and she had developed, across years of this, an instinct for what most people saw, not the unusual perspective, the common one, the survey answer, the 38 out of 100 answer. She answered 5 questions in 23 seconds. She came back with 71 points, 223 total. The $30,000 board lit. The room made a sound. Not the standard celebration sound of a game show, the eruption of a room that has been waiting for this specifically, that has understood for the past 40 minutes what this number meant and was holding its breath for it. Omar made a sound that had no adequate written representation. Sun Ya stood up. She stood up and she did not pump her fist or raise her arms. She simply stood, the way a woman stands when something important has happened and she wants her full height for it. Myrill had both hands over her face. Hassan put his arm around her. Desmond stood at the contestant position and looked at the board. $30,000. He had 7,948. Together, 37,948. The wheelchair cost 14,200. He was not doing the subtraction for the gap anymore. He was doing a different subtraction. The kind where the number comes out on the right side. Steve Harvey crossed the stage. Not go to the contestants first. He went to Desmond. He stood in front of him and he looked at him, not the host look, the person look, and he said, "You got it." Desmond looked at the board. "Yeah," he said. His voice was the voice of a man who has been holding a very large thing for a very long time and has just been told he can set it down and who is discovering that setting it down is its own kind of work. "You got it," Steve said again. Desmond put both hands over his face. He stood there for a moment. Then he took them off. He reached into his jacket pocket. He took out the folded paper. Steve Harvey looked at the paper. Desmond unfolded it. It was a drawing. Small, pencil, the lines of a person who drew with intention, the specific, observant lines of a teenager who had been in art class and had learned to look at things. A figure in a wheelchair on a road. The road going forward toward a bright horizon. The wheelchair drawn in careful detail, not the chair she had, the chair she needed. "She drew this 2 years ago," Desmond said. "I found it by accident. I've been carrying it since." Steve Harvey looked at the drawing. He looked at Desmond. "She drew the power chair," Steve said. "Before I could afford it," Desmond said. "Before anyone was talking about it, she drew it." He looked at the paper. "She drew herself in it going somewhere." "Does she know you have this?" Steve said. "No," Desmond said. The room had not moved since the board lit. 291 people were in the particular stillness of people who have been through the arc of something, tension, release, and now this, the thing underneath the thing, the personal object that turns a prize into a story. Myrill in the family section was looking at the drawing from 20 feet away. She could not see the details from that distance. She knew what it was anyway. She was his sister. She understood in the reorganizing way that family knowledge reorganizes when a missing piece arrives, why he had taken 2 jobs and why he had never said exactly what they were for and why, in 4 years of knowing that things were tight, he had never once asked her for help. He had not been building toward asking. He had been building toward this. "She doesn't know any of it," Steve Harvey said. Not as a question, as a confirmation of what he was understanding. "She knows the chair is a problem," Desmond said. "She stopped saying anything about it 8 months ago, which means she knew." He folded the drawing carefully. "She knew I knew, and she stopped saying anything because she didn't want to add it to what I was carrying." He put the drawing back in his pocket. "She's 17, he said. "She's working a job, she's going to school, she's living her life." He looked at Steve Harvey. "She did not need to be managing her father's feelings about the gap." So you managed them yourself, Steve said. I put the drawing in my pocket, Desmond said, and I went to work. Steve Harvey looked at the family section, at Sun Ya standing, at Myrill, hand over her mouth, at Omar, who had gone very quiet, which was the most dramatic change in the room. He turned back to Desmond. She's at work right now, he said. Your daughter. Bookstore, Desmond said. She started in February, applied herself. Applied herself, Steve said. She came home with the paperwork and filled it out at the kitchen table, Desmond said. I watched her do it. He paused. She has her mother's handwriting. The room absorbed this. The quiet addition of Grace, the mother, the woman with the binders and the color-coded system who had moved and then got to work, arriving in the room in a single sentence without being named. Steve Harvey stood with it. Can we call her? He said. Your daughter. Desmond looked at him. She's at work, he said. I know, Steve said. Can we call her? Desmond looked at the board, at the $30,000. Yeah, he said. We can call her. The production team got Lily on a video call in 4 minutes. The bookstore had a back office. The manager, who had watched the show for years and had said yes before the producer finished explaining the situation, had brought Lily's phone to her and told her there was a call and stood outside the door to give her the privacy. Lily appeared on the tablet screen. 17 years old, the manual wheelchair visible at the edge of the frame. She was in a blue bookstore polo shirt and she was looking at the camera with the expression of someone who had been handed a phone at work and told there was a call and had not yet processed what kind of call this was. Dad, she said. Hey, he said. She looked at the background, at the stage, at the lights and the board and the audience. Are you on? She squinted. Is that Family Feud? Yeah, he said. Dad, she said. You're on Family Feud. We won, he said. She looked at the board. She found the number. She was quiet for 3 seconds. $30,000, she said. Yes, he said. Another 2 seconds. Dad, she said. Why? She stopped. She looked at him, in the specific way of a 17-year-old who is very smart and who has just received a piece of information that is reorganizing other pieces of information she has been holding. Why did you apply to Family Feud? Desmond looked at the screen. Lily, he said, I'm going to tell you something and I need you to know that everything is fine and has been fine and is going to keep being fine. She waited. I applied, he said, because of the chair. Her expression moved. Your chair is not working the way it should, he said. It hasn't been for a while. The chair you need, the one the OT recommended, costs $14,200. Insurance won't cover it. I've been saving. He paused. I was at about $8,000. I came here for the rest. Lily was looking at the camera. She was not crying. She had, Desmond knew, her mother's composure, the ability to receive difficult information in the body before it arrived on the face. How long have you been saving? She said. 2 years, he said. Closer to 3. 2 jobs, she said. Yes. The warehouse and the hardware store. Yes. That's why, she said. That's why you've been. She stopped. She looked at her hands. She looked back at the camera. I thought you liked the hardware store. Desmond made a sound that was almost a laugh. I don't mind the hardware store, he said. Dad. She said it in the tone of someone who has just received a very large amount of information and is processing it in real time and is also, underneath the processing, feeling something that was going to take a while to fully arrive. Steve Harvey stepped forward. Lily, he said. I'm Steve Harvey. I know who you are, she said. She looked at the camera with the directness of a person who had been in therapy and doctor's offices since she was 14 months old and had long since stopped being intimidated by rooms and the people in them. Your dad's been carrying a drawing you made, Steve said. 2 years in his jacket pocket. She went still. What drawing? She said. Desmond reached into his jacket pocket. He held it up to the camera, the figure in the wheelchair on the road, the bright horizon. The chair drawn in specific, careful detail, the chair she had imagined herself in 2 years ago in a notebook for art class. Lily looked at it through the screen. That's from my sketchbook, she said. I found it, Desmond said. You left the notebook on the couch. I was putting it back in your bag. I found it. And you kept it, she said. 2 years, he said. In my pocket. She looked at the drawing, at her father's hand holding it up to a camera on a television stage in Lowe's Angels. At the figure on the road going somewhere. I didn't think anyone had seen that, she said. I know, he said. I didn't tell you I had it. He paused. I needed it with me. I can't fully explain why. I just needed it with me. Steve Harvey turned to the audience. I want to say something, he said, about this man. He did not perform it. He said it the way he said things when he had stopped thinking about television and was simply in the room. He has been working 2 jobs for 4 years. He has been saving for 3. He has been carrying a drawing in his pocket. He has been doing all of this without telling his daughter because she was already doing the work of her own life and he did not want to add his to hers. He paused. That is love as a practice, he said. Not the declaration, the practice, the warehouse shift and the hardware store and the jacket pocket and the application on a Thursday night at 11:15. He looked at Desmond. That is what it looks like when someone decides that another person's life is worth the cost of their own comfort, every single day, without announcement. He turned back to Lily on the screen. Your father sees you, he said. He has always seen you. He just showed you the evidence. Lily Ockaffer was 17 years old. She had been navigating the medical system since she was 14 months. She had been in occupational therapy and physical therapy and IEP meetings and insurance appeals and specialist waiting rooms for 17 years. And she had developed, across all of those rooms, the specific capability of a person who has been taken seriously and not taken seriously in equal measure, and has learned to hold both without letting either define her. She was not a fragile person. She was in the back office of a bookstore in Springfield, Illinois, in a blue polo shirt, and she was looking at her father's face on a tablet screen in a television studio 2,000 miles away, and she was crying in the way of someone who does not cry often and is not going to stop now that it has arrived. Dad, she said. Hey, he said. You didn't have to. I know, he said. You could have told me. I know, he said. I didn't want you to carry it. I already knew something was wrong with the chair, she said. I've known for months. I know you knew, he said. That's why I didn't say anything, because if you knew and you weren't saying anything, you were doing it for me, and I didn't want, he stopped. I didn't want us to be in a loop of protecting each other from the same thing. Lily looked at him through the screen. So you just fixed it, she said. I tried to fix it, he said. This room helped. In the family section, Sun Ya sat down. She had been standing since the board lit. She sat down now with the composure of a woman who has been holding herself at full height for as long as the occasion required and has decided the occasion now required sitting. She said nothing for a moment. Then she said, to no one in particular, in the way of someone completing a thought that had been building for a long time, his father did this. When Desmond was 12, 2 jobs, never said why. Myra looked at her mother. I didn't know that, she said. He didn't tell you either, Sun Ya said. That's how the men in this family love. They carry it and they fix it and they hand you the result and they let you think it was easy. She looked at the stage. It is not easy, she said. Steve Harvey, who had been listening, turned to Sun Ya. 67 years of watching this family, he said. What do you want to say to your son right now? Sun Ya looked at Desmond. You're like your father, she said. That's not a small thing. Desmond looked at his mother. He nodded once. Omar, who had been quiet for 13 minutes, which was, by a significant margin, the longest Omar had been quiet in any documented situation, said, Man, he said it to the room, to no one, to the ceiling. Just, man. The audience laughed. It was the full laugh, the release valve, the gift of air after a room has been somewhere heavy, the sound of people coming up from depth. Omar looked slightly surprised that he had caused it, and then very pleased. Steve Harvey turned to the screen. Lily, he said, your father is going to bring you home something. The money, she said. The money, Steve confirmed. And the drawing, he's going to bring you the drawing. She looked at the camera. I want the drawing, she said. I know, Desmond said. Is it okay if I put it back in my sketchbook? It's yours, he said. It was always yours. She looked at the drawing on the screen, the figure in the wheelchair going somewhere, the bright horizon, the careful, specific lines of a 15-year-old who had drawn a future for herself and put it in a notebook and not known her father had found it and had been carrying it toward her ever since. Okay, she said. I'm going to go back to work now. Go, Desmond said. Tell Grandma Sun Ya I said hi. She can hear you, Desmond said. Hi, Grandma Sun Ya, Lily said to the room. Sun Ya raised one hand. Good girl, she said. The screen went dark. Steve Harvey stood at the center of his stage. The Ockaffer family, he said, has won $30,000 today. The room, which had been through the arc of it, through the gap in the number and the drawing and the call and the that's how the men in this family love, stood up. Every person in the building, the floor manager, the production assistants at the edges, the camera operators on the moving rigs, everyone. For a man who went to work at a warehouse and then went to work at a hardware store and put a drawing in his jacket pocket and drove to the airport at 4:30 in the morning on a Friday, not for experience, not for adventure. For the rest, they ordered the wheelchair the following Tuesday. Desmond sat at the kitchen table at 8 in the evening after Lily had gone to her room to do homework, and he opened the browser and he found the page he had bookmarked 14 months ago, the page he had visited and closed many times since, the way you visit and close a page when you want something and cannot yet reach it, and he submitted the order. The delivery was estimated for 3 weeks. He closed the laptop. He sat at the kitchen table in the specific quiet of a man who has been moving towards something for a long time and has finally stopped moving, not because the journey was over, because this part of it was done. Lily came out of her room at 9:15 to get a glass of water. She found him at the table. You okay? She said. Yeah, he said. I ordered it. She looked at him for a moment. 3 weeks, she said. That's what it says. She nodded. She got her water. She started back toward her room. She stopped in the doorway. "Dad," she said. "Yeah." "Thank you," she said, not for the wheelchair, for the whole of it. He understood that. They were Akaforce. They communicated in the whole of it and left the specific parts to be understood. "Always," he said. She went back to her room. He sat at the table for a while longer. The drawing was on the table in front of him. He had brought it home from Lowe's Angels in his jacket pocket, as he had brought it everywhere for 2 years, and he had set it on the table when he got home. He had not given it back to Lily yet. She had not asked. They were each waiting for the right moment, which was the Akafor way: feel the thing, then move. The episode aired in November. The clip that moved through the world was 22 seconds. Desmond holding the drawing up to the camera and Lily going still on the screen and then saying, "I didn't think anyone had seen that." 22 seconds. In the comments, a woman wrote, "He carried her drawing for 2 years in his jacket pocket. He didn't tell her. He just kept it with him and went to work. I'm not okay." A man wrote, "I'm a single dad. I've been working nights for 3 years for something I haven't told my son about yet. I'm going to tell him when it's done. But this..." He didn't finish the sentence. He left it there. 14,000 people liked the unfinished sentence. A woman wrote, "That's how the men in this family love. They carry it and they fix it and they hand you the result. That line is going to live in me for a long time." The wheelchair arrived on a Thursday. Lily was at school. Desmond signed for it and brought it inside and set it in the living room and went to the warehouse. When Lily came home, she stopped in the doorway. She looked at it. It was exactly what the drawing had shown. She looked at it for a long time, then she got in. She adjusted the controls. She had memorized the manual, which the occupational therapist had sent in advance, the way she memorized things she was going to need. She moved it forward. She moved it back. She took it down the hallway and back. She texted Desmond, "It's here." He replied, "I know, I signed for it." She replied, "It's exactly like the drawing." He did not reply immediately. He was at the warehouse. He had a shift to finish. At 6:15, when he got home, she was in the living room doing homework. The chair was next to the desk. She looked up. He looked at the chair. He looked at her. "Good," he said. "Good," she said. He went to make dinner. The drawing was still on the kitchen table. That weekend, Lily put it back in her sketchbook. She put it in the back, not the page she had drawn it on, a new page. She taped it down. Under it, in her own handwriting, she wrote one word: "Arrived." If you are carrying something towards someone you love, a drawing in a pocket, a number on a spreadsheet, a tab open in a browser since November, keep going. The gap is real. The carrying is real. The arrival is real. And if someone has been carrying something toward you without telling you, if the 2 jobs and the early mornings and the hardware store 3 evenings a week have been adding up to something you did not know about, ask. Or wait. Or simply notice that someone has been moving toward you for a long time. They are still moving. Subscribe if this one stayed with you. We find one every week. We will be here, still moving.